If there's one criticism I could give myself, I've played way too many AAA games this year, both of the Western and the Eastern varieties. Needless to say, I've completely neglected some fantastic offerings from the minds of many small and independent teams, and boy, oh boy, did I decide to regret it later on in the year. But what game made me reach this uncomfortable realization? It was none other than Return of the Obra Dinn, exclusively for the PC and Mac. For those just as clueless as I was, Return of the Obra Dinn has you fill the role of an insurance worker aboard the abandoned ship known as the Obra Dinn. The ship appears in British waters after a failed expedition across the Atlantic Ocean, and you are tasked with assessing the damages and loss of life associated with the aforementioned voyage. As a professional of your respective line of work, you were given a book you were expected to fill out detailing who had died aboard the Obra Dinn, how they died, and who or what had done them in. To help with this seemingly mundane task, a special stopwatch known as the Memento Mortem is used to transport you to a visible and audible diorama of the precise moment where the victim passes on, and from there, you work your magic. When I mention seemingly mundane, I mean that only initially. I doubt anyone attempting to promote this game would work the term insurance consultant into an elevator pitch, but the creator Lucas Pope has a knack for putting players in positions where monotony subverts into an intriguing tale that is very hard to put down. Pope's previous game, Papers, Please, plays with this idea, and Return of the Obra Dinn is certainly no exception either. From the second you board the ship, you immediately become enthralled in the class warfare between officers and the crew, the loyalty of the top men looking out for each other, and foreign forces that threaten tragedy and misfortune towards the ship's members. The visuals, coupled with the 19th century setting, provides a wonderfully executed nostalgic angle as the game's environments, characters, and particle effects are rendered in a 1-bit monochromatic graphic style, similar to what you'd expect with games that released on old Macintoshes, IBM, or even Commodore systems. While this might not be ideal for some, this adds an extra layer of challenge in a reasonable fashion, when you really need to pay attention and flex your deductive muscle while discerning features like hair, scars, tattoos, and more. And flex you must! Return of the Obra Dinn definitely doesn't accept shortcuts or baseless deductions. As you go through the game and witness more deaths, audio and visual cues become far more important to ensure success, and zipping in and out of multi-tiered dioramas is very, very essential. Paying attention to details like how tattered or tailored one's attire is, the tendency for crew members to stick to their respective cliques, stewards sticking close to their officers both physically and by principle, little details like that are definitely important to detailing the fates of over 50 people on board. While there are certain measures in place to ensure you can't cheese your way through to the end, like guesses only being checked in threes and being overly pedantic in how the victim's deaths are processed, Return of the Obra Dinn feels much like an adult-oriented take on concepts popularized by specific board games like Mastermind, Guess Who, and Cluedo. While that's probably the most ridiculous claim I've made this year, the sheer pleasure derived from getting your guesses right feels almost identical. And of course, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Its audio design tends to hamper the tone a little. While the voice acting and ambient rattling of the ship do well, the music that accompanies most death scenes never really capitalizes on the circumstances of each member. One scene that may depict a man shooting another man in cold blood is met with a whimsical, offbeat ditty instead of a sinister, tragic sting. One can argue that this tone is meant to emphasize the soulless, drone-like conduct of bureaucracy, so if you're looking to get emotionally invested, the game doesn't really hit that mark, but it still has the potential to be jarring for some players. That said, you'd be hard-pressed to find a better investigative experience this year than Return of the Obra Dinn. Music aside, I love the way it played, and the way it sounded, and even the way it looked. It's a game that embraces its independently developed shortcomings, and it's a puzzle adventure that never really thinks too little or too much of its intended audience. And most of all, it's definitely a game that's worth your attention.